think this one's probably a fair dark horse, especially given how their offseason has unfolded. But the Atlanta Hawks. Atlanta's a popular city among NBA players, even if it hasn't been billed as this like high-end free agency destination. I think that a lot of people look at the draft equity the Hawks gave up for DeJounte Murray and just automatically assume you can't get Kevin Durant. I'm not disagreeing, but like look at some of the avenues here. So in terms of the picks that they have, that you could give up that protected Sacramento pick in 2024. There's a chance it never conveys, but it's protected until Kingdom Come. So it counts as a first round pick in my book. You give up your own 2023 pick, and then you can still trade 2029. And there's some swaps that you could work there. So that's 3 tangible first round picks you can give up. You also have a handful of interesting youngsters in DeAndre Hunter, Onyeka Okongwu, Jalen Johnson, who I'm absolutely in love with. And let's also not forget AJ Griffin, who they just drafted. Between those 4 guys, like you should be able to, if the Nets don't want any of them, I would argue they should probably want Hunter and Okongwu, even if they're looking to compete right away. But if the Nets don't want any of those, even Jalen Johnson, I'm in love with Jalen Johnson. Sorry, everyone. But you could trade those guys feasibly to teams that I would think in theory would give up a first round pick to Brooklyn. They're probably not distant first round picks, which gets a little iffy, but you also satisfy the requirements of, hey, if they want win now players, you have Bogdan Bogdanovic, Clint Capella, and John Collins. All these names in addition. So Clint Capella, John Collins, Bogdan Bogdanovic, DeAndre Hunter, Onyeka Okongwu, AJ Griffin, and Jalen Johnson, those 7 players, I would think that you could trade any single one of them for another first round pick. It's probably most sketchy on AJ Griffin and Jalen Johnson, which is fine. So, and especially the Jalen Johnson, just given his limited sample. But like, you just start rallying teams together, and there should be teams that are interested in Collins or Capella. And I'm assuming you're not giving up all 3 of your bigs, like Capella, Collins, and Okongwu in that deal. I think that you could probably put together something aggressive, especially, look, the Nets should probably want Collins. He fits with all of their bigs right now. So if you use Collins as sort of the salary anchor here, I don't know if they want Bogdanovic, but you have all these other youngsters plus your picks. Can you find 3rd and 4th teams that are just sending even more picks to Brooklyn? So they're still getting a fringe all-star in John Collins, and then they would still just get a shit ton of draft equity, again, unless they were really in love with some of the young players, which, again, they might be. DeAndre Hunter, good, even though he's extensionable. Onyeka Okongwu, almost positionless on defense, and there's some more offense to explore there. You have Claxton, Day'Ron Sharpe there, and if you're keeping Collins, you certainly don't want him. You could, will someone give you a first-round pick for Clint Capella? That's probably tough. Would Toronto be that team? Their salary filler is a little bit hard-pressed, and I don't think they're not going to give up OG Anunoby for Clint Capella, and they're also not going to do so to help a conference rival get Kevin Durant, I don't think. But Kevin Durant, DeJounte Murray, Trae Young, just as your base, that gets incredibly intriguing. And so I don't think Atlanta has the best KD offer, but they could be a team that's more incentivized to throw out their best foot, more so than a Toronto, more so than a New Orleans. And that could put them technically in front of the bidding if they wanted to. Again, I don't think they get there, but that's just a team that I think we should probably consider a little bit more in this conversation. Eric Gordon, I just have him here because it's like, well, what the fuck is this guy doing on the Rockets still? He shot incredibly well on drives last year, 55+%, hit his 3-ball well. He can stand very far behind the arc and, again, gives you that rim pressure, like I just said. And he'll just hold up on defense. There are players who are his size and his age should probably be worse defensively when you're going to move him around the 2 and 3 spots. I haven't heard him mentioned like any specific teams. I thought about the Cavs, but I feel like he's been mentioned there too much. And unless it's a Colin Sexton sign and trade, which possible. I mean, that's not, I actually have Houston listed as one of my Colin Sexton destinations. So maybe, but I have Memphis just because I think maybe you want someone bigger on the wings. But if you're really in love with David Roddy, Jake LaRavia, and Zaire Williams, you have Desmond Bane. Just to have another offensive outlet after losing Kyle Anderson, who's more of a playmaker, and you still do have Tyus Jones. Again, you'd be on the smaller end, but if you're going to continue to run out dual bigs for stretches, I think you just need people who can shoot and then someone else who's comfortable attacking off the dribble. Eric Gordon's not necessarily a stop and pop guy, but he's going to give you some just really strong rim pressure that I don't think you're going to necessarily get at the same level from Desmond Bane or Zaire Williams at this point. Just to have that secondary scoring and then primary shooting. He can play off the ball so well and really stretch the floor out. Imagine him and Jaren Jackson Jr. on the court at the same time, both basically standing by the timeline. That's just going to stretch defenses paper thin. They can also get to his money without giving up Steven Adams as well. You have once you can legally aggregate Danny Green's salary, the $10 million non-guarantee, the $10 million chip, that gives you a basis for all this. And then I also have Milwaukee. Getting to his money is tough. It has to be Grayson Allen and then George Hill and then other smaller salaries. If they put Marjan Beauchamp on the table, Houston should just absolutely jump at that. I don't think they're going to. I can't picture them including a distant. They could trade a 2029 first. I can't picture them doing it for Eric Gordon. But if Houston, maybe they have some interest in Grayson Allen, who's on this shorter term deal, showed some really bright moments as a shooter, mostly before the postseason last year. George Hill just expiring. Maybe you're getting just other teams involved. Is there a team out there that would take George Hill? Would Toronto consider taking George Hill? I don't know if they have a trade exception large enough. I'd have to look that up. I did notice, though, this is something that was interesting. There's currently no NBA trade exception right now that's worth more than or worth even $10 million. I don't know if that's like a common occurrence. And yeah, Toronto has a trade exception they could take George Hill into. But I just thought that was fascinating because, looking at names like Eric Gordon specifically, and then even someone else to come on my list that I made, I kind of thought, well, what if they could slide into a trade exception and their team just wants to save money? Didn't work like that. So Milwaukee's a little bit tougher, but if Houston's not looking for a ton of value, maybe they're just trying to do right by Eric Gordon too and send him to a contender. I would love him in Milwaukee. Some of your lineups would be smaller, but you can play Drew, Giannis, Middleton, and Eric Gordon at the same time. And it doesn't matter. Is Giannis your big in that scenario? Is Brook Lopez on the court? Pat Connaughton? I don't give a shit.